Hello and welcome back to the Tactics Board podcast. Today we're previewing the Liverpool-Man City game at the weekend, and we're also going more in depth into Liverpool, more specifically what's gone wrong at Liverpool this season, because I've got a very special guest on. I'm joined by Liverpool fan Ryan. Ryan, I've followed you for quite a long time on TikTok. I think you make great unbiased videos, maybe getting captures that other people don't really see, but just for the people that aren't aware of your content, how would you describe what you make on TikTok?
So, hey, I'm Ryan, otherwise known as Ryan Waffles About Ball for some unknown reason. I tend to do things on Italian, English football, and football finances, transfers, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the financial stuff is really interesting. So I think you definitely look at other leagues. Like you do quite a lot of content on Italian football, German football, whereas me personally, I'm mainly Premier League, and then I dabble a bit in the French league as well. But I don't really watch those things, so it's quite interesting to get that more generalized perspective rather than someone who's got extreme Premier League bias like most people do.
I've always grown up loving football, and I find that the best way to watch football is when you watch it as a neutral. So I've always just loved watching other leagues, basically just so I can watch good football without having any preferences, and it's just sort of allowed me a more neutral view.
Yeah, I think that's like really poignant as well, because you do get that kind of unbiased sense in your videos. Even when you do talk about Liverpool, I think you do get like a nice viewpoint. You're clearly a football fan before a Liverpool fan, which is something that I think is really important. I only have people on the podcast that are football fans before they are fans of the club. So, but yeah, so we'll just dive into it. Obviously, you are a Liverpool fan, and we're here to talk about Liverpool. So the main elephant in the room, I think, is about Arne Slot at the moment. Are you slot in or are you slot out? Where do you kind of sit on that?
Okay. If I were making a decision, I would get rid of him, but I'm not slot out in that I feel that we should protest or anything. If it was down to me, I'd probably make the call, but it's just more of a sense of he kind of doesn't look like he has the answers a lot of the time. He seems so rigid in his decision making. He's got sort of this stubbornness that seems really difficult to shake, and a lot of the time we look very one note and very, very easy to play against. I do love him as a person because of everything that he did last year, not even just necessarily the title, but how he dealt with the awful crises we had in the summer. He's someone at the moment I would say I think he should go, but I love him. I wish him all the best, basically.
I think I expect kind of an end of season handshake situation where you don't want to sack him with what he's done, but maybe a bit like we saw Tottenham do with Ange, you just kind of push him away in the summer, especially with like the other managers that are available on the market. Someone like Xabi Alonso coming in, when you have Frimpong and Wirtz, guys who he's worked with in the past and really thrived with, I think it's kind of a no-brainer to bring him in. I mentioned before to you before we start recording that I'm doing a piece on Liverpool, a YouTube video that's going to be coming out on Saturday, so I'd definitely go and watch that. But yeah, and I basically said at the end of that how I'd fix Liverpool, and I think the number one thing is going and getting Xabi Alonso for me because of how he'd elevate Wirtz and platform him effectively. He knows how to do that, whereas I'm not sure Slot does.
Exactly that. I think as well, the way that Alonso was sacked by Real Madrid, it's clear that it wasn't the tactics. It was essentially his man management of these superstars with massively inflated egos, which I don't think he would necessarily have. He wouldn't have as big of a problem with dealing with, honestly, anywhere else aside from Real Madrid. I can't think of anywhere else I don't think he would be able to thrive and kind of share his ideology.
I think Real Madrid, I put Man United in that category as well for me right now. I think they're kind of two peas in a pod in a way. It's similar jobs. But yeah, like you mentioned, I made a video yesterday saying why I'd love to have Xabi Alonso at Man City.
Yeah, I saw.
There's so many people that maybe haven't watched La Liga a lot, haven't watched Real Madrid, and therefore just think Xabi Alonso failed completely tactically. But like you mentioned there, he didn't at all. I think the poignant points, if you like, was that El Clasico 2-1 win in about October where they won the game and he made a sub in like the 70th minute where Barcelona were getting on them a bit. They were playing through their press. So he took off Vinicius Jr., brought on Rodrigo for more defensive stability, and the sub worked like perfectly. They saw out the game and won, but Vinny just threw his toys out the pram, and from that point on, the dressing room was done. Like, I know even Vinicius Jr. released a statement like apologizing. I think 2 days
No.
later, he apologized to everyone except Xabi Alonso. I think that's quite purposeful.
I just can't imagine that happening anywhere else.
That's what I mean. Like, player power at Real Madrid, I think, is ridiculous. And for me, it's why they aren't as successful as they maybe should be when you look at the players. Because the idea that one or two players, no matter how important they are, can get a manager sacked despite results clearly being very good, I think is just silly.
Exactly. I think, if I remember, Alonso went on like a 14 or so game winning or unbeaten run to start his reign off. Like, it was a record, but it all lies with the players. It always will lie with the players.
I think if he did come into Liverpool, would you be pro a back three kind of system maybe? Because I think with the big signing you've just made with Jeremy Jacquet coming in, he's obviously played in a back three before at Rennes. I think there's maybe a possibility for that now, whereas there wasn't before.
I think a lot of it would depend on what we did in the summer, because we would have to rely on Leone, who's completely unproven, and Gomez, who is, he's liable to miss 3/4 of a season. I think generally, I love him, but he is someone that you assume he's injured unless you're told otherwise. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean. And but just for me, when I look at this Liverpool team, right, especially with your issues at the moment, like when he switched to this 4-2-2 kind of thing, where you're pushing Frimpong and Kirkes up really high because those are the areas they thrive in, but you're just getting caught in that space behind them. Like Bournemouth did you relentlessly down there.
Oh my
God.
God.
I just think being able to have wing backs, like we saw at Leverkusen, Frimpong was fantastic in that slightly more advanced role as a wing back when you have that cover behind him. And I think that would suit Kirkes really well too. And with Xabi Alonso being so successful with that system in the past, obviously he didn't use it at Real Madrid, but I could see him bringing it back at Liverpool.
I'd love to see how we kind of go about it, because I guess a big thing is what is sort of the situation around Salah. Like there are so many different variables. I've heard people say that he could be played more central, or maybe it's just time we kind of stop focusing a system around him. I think what's clear at the moment is the system that we're currently playing gets the best out of no one.
I think that's quite damning for Arne Slot as well, isn't it? Because your job as a manager is to build a system that platforms your best players really effectively. I think that's why Amarin failed at United, right? You can't have one system and expect it to just work with any set of players. But yeah, for me, he just doesn't platform Florian Wirtz well at all. Like you're not getting the best out of him. I know he's improved a bit recently, but Wirtz is an unbelievable player that hasn't changed just because he's come to the Premier League. And I think having someone like Xabi Alonso maybe understands the areas Wirtz thrives in better than Arne Slot does. He'll put him in those larger spaces and really platform him to build the team around Wirtz would really help. And you mentioned Mo Salah there, right? I think you should move on from Salah. So I think there's kind of like a clash at the moment of whose team it is. Like Salah previously has always been the guy. He's been the player who has all the shots. Like last season, he had the most shots in the Premier League. This season, he's 15th for shots in the Premier League. And it just feels like there's a bit of tension there. Whose team is this? Is it still Mo Salah's team, or is it now Florian Wirtz's team? Is it Isak's team? Like there's not clarity in that area. And I think your squad dynamics have to be clear if you want to be successful.
Usually, yeah. Obviously, last year it was all geared towards Salah, and no one would have had an issue with that because he produced, statistically the best Premier League season of all time. And obviously, when it's successful, it's easier to judge. But Salah, he's kind of I feel he'll always be the kind of player that will pop up. He always does carry with him an air of danger purely just because of who he is. But I think filtering the play towards him now, it just makes no sense.
I think you're not filtering the play really towards it, but the profile that Mo Salah is then doesn't fit the role Arne Slot wants to play him in. I think the game against Chelsea ages back in October, I think, is a really great example of this. It's like Mo Salah's he's not getting the ball loads, so he's not really effective in attack, if you like, but then he's also doing no defensive work. And you can't have that in a team. Like Chelsea just repeatedly pushed Cucurella past him into the midfield, and you're already 3v2 in there with Cucurella in there too. It's 4v2, and that just allowed Chelsea to completely control the game. Whereas if you don't have Salah in that team, you go full in on Florian Wirtz and Isaac Ekitike kind of vibe. Then you bring in, I don't know, who'd you bring in? Let's put in a Chiesa. He's going to track that run, and that's going to help you so much defensively.
Hugely. I think obviously the big thing with Salah is that last year he was specifically told, like, you know, stay as far forward as possible, and that suited him just fine. But I guess the big thing is that people have kind of latched onto that we haven't necessarily been that good since, say, January 2025. The title was basically, no one would have said it then, but it was kind of a procession from that point on. So we were kind of allowed to be a bit lax up until that point. And you just kind of assumed that it would change. I remember earlier in the season, Slot was brilliant, like unbelievable when it came to readjusting things at the break if needed, or his subs would be spot on at perfect timing. But that's just gone the complete opposite way now.
I think that's an interesting point. So it's kind of weird, isn't it? Because I thought the biggest advantage of Arne Slot was his in-game management. His in-game tweaks were fantastic. I remember the first game he played for, well, he didn't play, but the first game he managed for Liverpool was Ipswich, and the first half was absolutely abysmal. And then he made changes at half time, and I think he won that game in the end, or it might have been a draw. You got something out of the game in the end from Arne Slot's tactical tweaks. But now, like you say, it seems the changes he's making, if anything, are detrimental to the team rather than positive. Why do you think that monumental shift in his ability is?
I think he's just kind of run out of ideas. I think a lot of it also is due to the lack of trust he has in players. I think, you know, he refuses to play Chiesa for anything more than 15 minutes a match. He will basically disregard Endo as a possibility. And it gets boring when even at times where we've had, you know, more or less the whole team fully fit, the only option he has, seemingly, if we're down or we need a goal, is he takes off a midfielder and puts on a striker, and that's it. Nothing changes. It's just a different body. I think he kind of, I don't know, because that's something I'm not been able to figure out at all. Because, like he said, it seemed like that was his greatest strength, and now it seems to be among his biggest weaknesses.
I think again everything for me always comes back to the shifting dynamics. I think a massive factor is Trent Alexander-Arnold, right? Because last season, I think the whole system is built around Salah and this guy, and then you've lost him, and he's not a profile that is replaceable. There's nobody in like Trent in world football, especially at right back, and you take him out the team, and then bring in Connor Bradley, and you're basically asking Slot to reinvent his whole system. Like, your main creator has gone from being your right back, someone who's on the right flank, right? Someone you can get on the ball quite comfortably, you can get on the ball at high frequencies, and now I'd say your main creator is Florian Wirtz. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's
100%.
playing in the pockets on the left. Like, the dynamics of how that team has to change to accommodate for that are absolutely massive. And I think when you're changing so many other things at the same time, like your left back, your full back, your strikers changing, Mo Salah's dropping off as well, it's just asking for at least an adaptation period that's going to be huge.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I think attack's the big one, in that everyone that played in our attack last year, Diaz, Jota, Nunez, they did the busy work more than anything else. They were there to kind of supplement Salah rather than either the opposite way around, or kind of like a more spread out partnership. I think for the first time, I'm really starting to question Liverpool squad building, which is something that I've seen as maybe our biggest strength in the last 7-8 years.
I think it doesn't help with the money you've spent all at once, because I think realistically, if we look at Liverpool's spending over like the last 5 years, it's still quite low. Net is very, very good. Like, you manage your finances well, but so much of football is the vibes around the club. It's the narrative, right? And by spending all that money at once, despite also selling quite a lot in that window, your net wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible compared to some other teams. Like, you just set yourself up for this narrative of, oh, if Liverpool don't win, then Slot's awful. If Liverpool don't win, it's a massive failure. And I don't think that's necessarily true. Despite spending all that money at once, it's still a very fast adaptation period, and you're going to have to adapt.
Usually, I don't think Slot knew what he was getting himself into with these signings. I don't really think he had a great grasp of who the players he was signing was.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think just when you look at how he uses someone like Kerkez, I think he's got it together a bit now. But just especially at the start of the season, like Kerkez is a player for me whose strengths are in advanced areas. I don't think he is an amazing defender. What he's amazing at is getting in the final third and putting in really dangerous crosses. And he has him like basically playing as a left centre back in build up in a back three. That's not his strengths at all. And you're getting, it's just his weaknesses. You're getting none of his strengths. Like, it makes no sense to use him like that. And I think as the season's gone on, we have seen him platform the likes of Kerkez and Vert slightly better, but it's still not great, which is why, again, it comes back to Xavi Alonso, right? I think bringing someone in who understands how to platform players, that's been a consistent success he's had at every club, would really help Liverpool just at least get back to a, maybe not competing for the title, because I think Arsenal are so good, but you'd be up there for it still.
I think, Kerkez, you mentioned, I think is definitely someone who would thrive in the back three, thrive as a left wing back. He was someone that I felt out of all of our signings, he was the most guaranteed success, plug and play. Nothing could possibly go wrong with him. So seeing him have to play as a left centre back basically was just really confusing.
I think it's the fact that, for me, with fullbacks, I don't want the same profile on each side. Like, you kind of want, you want a defensive one, really, and then you want an attacking one. I think that works really well at Man City, say, if we've got Ryan Aït-Nouri on the left, Mateus Nunes on the right. They kind of balance quite well in that respect. And I don't think you have that at the moment. You've got two guys in Frimpong and Kerkez who, for me, are quite similar in terms of they both want to bomb forward, they'd be in advanced areas, and you can't have them both there, right? Because when we've seen you have them both there, you leave so much space out wide that you're just a sitting duck on the counter attack. Like, you need that balance almost that you don't have at the moment.
Exactly, and well, I mean, at the moment we've got Szoboszlai or Curtis Jones, because again, Slot just refuses to acknowledge the existence of, say, Calvin Ramsey.
But even like playing someone like Connor Bradley, he's not the best defensive fullback in the world. But I think it'd just help give you more balance and just let Kerkez like spread his wings a bit more. But when you have played with Connor Bradley at right back, it seems Kerkez is still playing that more defensive role, and Connor Bradley's the one going forward.
It makes no sense to me. It's infuriating.
It's bizarre. Like, I've been watching quite a lot of Liverpool recently because I'm doing that YouTube video, and it's just like, it is baffling. It's like watching Ruben Amorim's Man United. You just look at the positions he's using players in, how he's utilizing someone like Bruno. It's just baffling. Like, it makes no sense. There's no way you can possibly get your head around it. Like,
so I'm honest, I don't get how these philosophy managers have kind of become so popular, because it sounds so straightforward, but the job of a manager is to get the best out of the team that he's got. And Amorim, for a season and a half, had quite possibly the best player United have had post Fergie, basically playing out of position, playing completely out of where he's most effective. And you'd think, surely, even just to satiate the fans, you would platform your best player in the position where he's most effective.
Yeah, exactly. I think Michael Carrick's someone who has done that excellently when he's come in. And it's amazing just how much simple changes can transform a team. Like, by leaning into that Man United identity of this fast counter-attacking football, just playing simple football. All it is Bruno in the 10, and let's get our fast runners to run forwards. It's that simple. It's simple instructions, and it makes the world of difference. And I think Liverpool could benefit from that a bit as well right now. I feel like it feels quite complex when you look at the squad. There is still so much quality in there. Yes, maybe you're missing a DM to complement Gravenberch, but there's still, you've got Ekatike, Wirtz. These guys are fantastic players, and I just think with good platforming, they'd show they're fantastic players.
Exactly that. You couldn't have put it better, honestly. It's just Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying, I think something that's interesting when we were talking about how they've kind of all come in at once and that's hurt the narrative. I think that is poor squad building, right? Like you mentioned, because part of what a club does is to try and control that narrative, which means sometimes you have to transfer slower to allow you to stay at the level. I think this is something Man City have done quite well. Have we been winning the titles? No, but we've still been competing for them all throughout this transition period, which I think's been last year, this year, and probably next year as well. And because you kind of do that slowly, you build slowly, you don't let all these changes happen at once. It can happen almost seamlessly. Like, for example, Kevin De Bruyne leaves, you bring in Ryan Cherky, who plays the same role. Like, you're not having to change things like Trent for Florian Wirtz, which is a massive change, and then look at all these other things happening as well. You kind of take it one step at a time. Like this summer, I expect Bernardo Silva will go out. He's quite a key building block, and Elliot Anderson will come in. You're doing it methodically and slowly to allow that adaptation to not damage the team as a whole as much.
Exactly. Like we've replaced such different profiles in the team, and the lack of balance shows. It's something that, weirdly enough, I think up until recently had gotten worse progressively since the start of the season.
I think you haven't been helped by McAllister either. I think that's quite interesting. So last season for me, he was fantastic. I thought he was one of the best midfielders in the league. He had kind of Bernardo Silva vibes, I think. And then this year, his legs have just completely, like, out of nowhere, just, like, collapsed. And when you combine that with Florian Wirtz having to come into that midfield as well, like, the out-of-possession level of it has gone from being one of the best in the league for me to now probably, like, somewhere in the middle to low range.
Honestly, yeah. Yeah, it's strange because he just used to be able to do the simple things so well, so mechanically, and now it just seems alien to him.
I think maybe it's the fact that he's not got that great structure around him, because the Premier League is like so fast. I think we forget how fast the football is. Like you see the Tielemans body cam video or whatever, and you're like, how do they think this fast? And like when you change so much around players at once, like when McAllister maybe get on the ball in midfield, you'd look up and go, Mo Salah's going to be there, you're going to be here. Like I know what to do with it. And now he's getting on the ball, he's looking up for maybe Salah, and Salah's not there anymore, and he's looking up for Gakpo. Gakpo's in a different position now, and that can just hurt how these players function. Maybe that's been a bit kind to him, but
I think we're being a bit kind to him.
Yeah,
it's definitely systematically based, but there's a lot that's gone wrong with him as a player this year. And the worst thing is, he's someone who has been so incredibly consistent virtually since the moment he joined, if not like save the first like 2 months where he was playing defensive mid on the clock. He's been exceptional for virtually since November 2023. But this year, it looks like he's completely out of confidence.
Do you think that's a temporary issue and you're not that fussed about it, or would you look to bring in someone to replace him in the summer?
I think he's earned a chance. He's definitely earned the right for me to consider it a temporary blip, because he's been, like I said, he's been basically the beacon of consistency for years beforehand. I do think maybe I'll feel differently if, say, like April, May, he's in the same sort of slump. Because obviously, a big thing is he is basically our most sellable asset, and he's still relatively young. It's not something I'd want to consider, but if it came to it, then I guess he'd have to be considered.
Yeah, I think the midfield market is really good at the moment too. Like if you were gonna get rid, I don't think not now's a bad time to do it. When you look around, like you've got someone like Emerson in the Serie A, I think you could bring him in for quite a decent price. He'd do a solid job. Like it's not a bad replacement. And you've got just in the Premier League alone, like Carlos Baleba, Adam Wharton, Elliot Anderson. Like there's so many names floating around at the moment that you could go and pick up their obtainable assets. When maybe if you wait a year and it doesn't fix, are those guys still going to be there? Probably not.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot to consider this summer. I think as well we've got a lot of rebalancing to do, basically. I don't know how that would look.
I think it completely depends on what manager comes in, if Slot's still there, right? Because if Xavi Alonso comes in, you're going to buy very different players to if you go and get like a Thomas Tuchel.
That'd be hilarious. I could not imagine Tuchel at Liverpool.
I mean, that was probably a bad example. Just the first manager that kind of popped up. Maybe we would go like, I don't even know, like Luis Enrique, someone like that. The point is, these managers like different players. They want different players. They like different players that are already in the Liverpool squad. So you're going to need to fix different areas. I think the clear issues were firstly centre back, which you've already addressed, and then for me it is that maybe a winger if Mo Salah leaves, and then a midfielder. Because I think, I don't know how you rate Gravenberch, but personally I think he's very overrated. Like, as that single pivot that he plays out for you currently, like even last season when he was great, I think he's really good at very unimportant things, if that makes sense. Like, he's fantastic on the half turn and he can drive with the ball really well. But for me, I don't think he's that good out of possession. I don't think he's an elite progressive passer of the ball. And I think you kind of need someone next to him who's going to like fill those weaknesses in his game. Maybe an Adam Wharton, for example, a Carlos Baleba, Elliot Anderson. Any of those three I think would do well, but just to balance it out a bit.
Do you get that? I think I have seen people, put him in conversations with Rice and Caicedo, and that's something we always thought, hold on a minute there. He's very stylish. He's really good to watch when he's playing well, but he can just be rendered so ineffective so quickly. And it seems like more and more teams are catching on to that.
Yeah, I think it's a bit Tijani Reinders in that sense. He's a fair weather player, right? When the team's playing well, I think Gravenberch will look great. But when the going gets tough, like Caicedo is the guy that's going to step up for Chelsea. Declan Rice will step up for Arsenal and still compete in that game. Whereas I feel like Gravenberch just kind of goes down with the ship. And if you can balance out those weaknesses with someone else, I think that would go a long way to improving this Liverpool team, because to play a player of Gravenberch level as a single pivot, I think it's just silly. Like, especially in the modern game where it's so athletic, I think you need a world-class player like Caicedo to be able to justify playing a single pivot. Even Rodri now in the single pivot for me is a bit like far-fetched. I think he needs someone next to him too. Every single elite team, bar Chelsea right now, is playing with a double pivot. So I don't understand why Liverpool aren't really doing the same.
Yeah, and I guess it's highlighted as well, more so this year because McAllister's been so off the boil, because it's just highlighted Gravenberch's deficiencies to a greater extent.
I think someone I really like at Liverpool is Szoboszlai, right? Do you think there's maybe a possibility to drop Szoboszlai in there, or would you, and then have Wirtz in front, that midfield three, or would you rather have Wirtz come in off the left, maybe push Kerkers up high, which is what I'd do, and then have Szoboszlai further forward and bring in another player to play next to Gravenberch?
See, Szoboszlai has always kind of stated that he is an 8. And supposedly, the way we signed Florian Wirtz is by assuring him that he would be playing as the 10. He wouldn't be shoved off to the side. I think the main sticking point was that at Bayern he would have to compete with that slot with Musiala, whereas at Liverpool he would kind of just be, the team would be built around him. I think Szoboszlai is someone who his main trait is his relentless energy, but on top of it he's also hyper athletic. He can pick a pass. He can drive the team forward. I would definitely like to see him as the 8 with Wirtz as a 10. But that, you are right, that having a single pivot definitely needs a rework.
Yeah. For me, Szoboszlai is one of the best players in the league. I think he is fantastic. I saw a video of someone just breaking down his it was one simple pass, but how he just dictates the team. Like, he had the ball, I think he called it quarterbacking, which is quite interesting. Jesus, quite interesting. But he had the ball in a deeper area, and there's an opportunity to play the pass into Mo Salah. And instead of playing it straight away, he points at Florian Wirtz and just tells him, you make a run. And then Wirtz makes the run, drags the defender away from Mo Salah, which then gives him the space to turn. I think Szoboszlai is great at those little details. He feels like a real leader for me. I think building the team around him and Wirtz, or at least building the midfield around him and Wirtz, is something you have to do.
100%. I think Szoboszlai as well, we've all known his qualities, but I didn't anticipate that he would be the player to step up when things were going rough. I didn't anticipate that he'd be the player that we can rely on, which is something that he's completely blown me away this season. I think that's something I noticed from like the absolute best Liverpool players, say like Salah in 2023, Salah in 2021. The ability to drag your team through the mud is something that I think is just a rare inherent quality in players. So the fact that Szoboszlai is doing that so frequently now is brilliant to see, and I really hope Real Madrid don't go near
it. I think that is the best quality to have as a player, that kind of not being fair weather, like being able to step up when it gets tough. And it's one of my main criticisms of someone like Phil Foden. Like, I think when the team's playing well, I think Foden looks fantastic. But as the guy who's going to be the guy has to be able to step up no matter the conditions of the game. That's something De Bruyne always did. He'd just be able to get the game and just pull you back into it. Whereas someone like Foden doesn't do that. But like you mentioned, Szoboszlai does do that. Does Florian Wirtz do that out of interest? I don't think I've watched enough of Liverpool to be able to say.
Wirtz did that a lot in the Bundesliga. Like, you remember Leverkusen going invincible. A lot of the time, it was his kind of ingenuity that had that, that like spell where they were constantly like losing in the 90th minute, and he would have that. He would just be able to keep calm, keep composed, and be able to pick a pass or see an opening. And it's something that I rate very highly of him. But it's just not something that, again, I don't think he's been platformed to do it at all really this season. Everything good that he's done has been his own ingenuity rather than the system allowing him to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think this brings us back on to Xabi Alonso, right? I think the idea of having obviously Hoffman played that right forward, kind of right cam, if you like, role at Leverkusen. And a lot of the work he did was dropping a bit deeper into midfield to help out that too. Do you think we could maybe see Szoboszlai play that role and you have that kind of works as a 4 in midfield with Wirtz, but it just give Wirtz the freedom to really go and do what he does best, which is create?
At this point, we could start Szoboszlai centre back and I wouldn't have an issue with it. I do think that would be a really interesting thing because Szoboszlai's energy is his main point. I think just giving him the freedom to run as much as possible, to be as much of a pain as possible, I think that would just benefit us in the long run.
I think as well, it just helps someone like Frimpong to have that kind of energy next to him. Because I don't look at Frimpong as someone who's like fantastic out of possession, but having him wide, if he's got Szoboszlai next to him, right, that's going to help him out in that area.
Hugely. I think as well, when it comes to Frimpong, and at the start of the season with Ekitike and Wirtz, the one thing you notice from the off is how unsuited they were originally to the physicality. I think that's something that's still got to develop with Frimpong. Frimpong is still very weak. So having someone more athletic and stronger to help him in those duels, I think could make a lot of sense.
This is why I always think teams should always buy from the French league. I think it's the best league to buy from, because when we look at, say, Ryan Cherki, he's used to the physicality because he's played in France. He doesn't have that adaptation period. And I think it is a risk, right, buying anywhere apart from Prem or France, is that are they going to be able to deal with the increase in intensity, which is why it brings us on nicely to Jeremy Jacquet. I think that's quite a nice signing, because I think what you see so often with the centre-backs coming across is, especially when they're of that kind of aggressive physical nature that Jeremy Jacquet is, they just kind of can't hack it. Victor Gyökeres is a good example for this happening with strikers, where they base their whole game around having this physical advantage, and then suddenly I don't have a physical advantage anymore. I'm just a bit useless. Whereas I don't think that will happen with Jacquet.
Yeah, no. From what I've seen of Jacquet as well, he's composed and he's good on the ball, and he's someone that, like you mentioned before, he can play in a 3, he can play in a 2. But really, I'm very motivated by that signing in particular. I think that's a really intelligent bit of business, and I think as well the amount of other clubs that seem to be going in for him, I feel like that's something that can only reflect well on us. One thing I was getting a little bit worried about is that we were going to start losing the pool that we had, but if someone like Jack is choosing us over, say, Chelsea or anyone else that was interested, then that's a big positive for me.
I think I love Jeremy Jack. I dibble and dabble in Ligue 1 quite a lot, so I've known about him since last season when he broke on. I think he's been a big talent since then, right? He's been captain in the French youth team since he was about 16. He's clearly got that leadership. But I think something that's interesting is how he's been branded to Liverpool fans that haven't seen as much as him. Like you mentioned, the first thing you said was he's quite good on the ball, and I just don't think that's an advantage of Jack at all. I think he is okay. Don't get me wrong, but it's not his best thing. And I think when you're branding a player that most people haven't seen, for example, I think especially when it's a centre back, I think the thing to do is go, oh, he's the next Van Dijk. He's good on the ball. Everyone's good at the ball until they're not good on the ball.
I've been fed a lie by TikTok apparently, I think, then.
But for me, like so many people go, yeah, like I say, next Van Dijk, good on the ball. But for me, he's way more like Konate. He's got that kind of aggressive nature about him. He's going to step up. He's going to win duels. Like when I watch him on the ball, I think he looks kind of gangly. He's like a bit Pythagoras in Boots said, very Lenny Yoro.
That's it. That's an interesting way of putting it, thinking about it.
I don't think especially when you've got someone like Leone as well, another young centre back coming up. For me, he's way more similar to Van Dijk than Jeremy Jacquet is. I see Leone as that long-term Van Dijk replacement, ideally, and then Jacquet is more of a Konate.
I'm just hoping whatever it is, it works at this point. I've got I think a big part of it, like you said, is the physicality. I think, for instance, with Cherki, the fact that he's moved from Liga into the Premier League, he's not lost any of that spark, any of kind of that ingenuity. I've said ingenuity a lot. I need to find a different synonym, but he's very unpredictable, and it's something that I thought would be curbed in the Premier League, but if anything, it just seems to have gotten more free form.
And the thing with Cherki, though, that I think you have to remember is that he's come in his perfect role almost. Like we talk about how Florian Wirtz is translated and maybe he's not being platformed correctly. Cherki's been platformed absolutely perfectly when he plays. Like the role he played for Lyon, he's basically come in and played that exact same role for Manchester City, which is something you don't really see. It's rare a signing comes into a big club and is instantly the guy. But we have seen that with Ryan Cherki. The translation's really nice because of it.
That's a good point. That is a good point. He has basically just been plugged and played the same way.
I think there's a video on YouTube, I can't remember, Sincere FC, it's by this guy, and he's talking about this idea of usage, kind of looking at how many possessions ends with a player, basically how often a player has the ball. And when you look at someone like Ryan Cherki, for example, his usage is exactly the same at Man City than it was at Lyon. Within a squad at Lyon, he was the second highest usage player. At Man City, he is the second highest usage. And I think that helps translation as well. But when you look at someone like Wirtz, he's gone from being very, very heliocentric, the player that's losing the ball. Well, he is losing the ball the most, but that's because he's having the ball the most at Leverkusen. He is the guy, basically. And now at Liverpool, he's like fourth, fifth, kind of third. He hasn't come into the same role.
Yeah, no, like I guess that's what all the memes were about at the start of the season. That people were saying, "Oh, you've got Wirtz, and all he's doing is just getting them running stats." But I think now it seems like players actively look for him, no matter where they are, no matter where he is. It looks like they are searching for a ball towards him, which I think is exactly what needs to be done with him.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see the stats for maybe like the last 10 games, because it does feel like it is shifting back to him being this higher usage, more heliocentric player. But again, I think for him to really be where he's best, which for me is building the team around him, ensuring he is the main man, Salah has to go, right?
Don't want to think about that, but you might be right.
I don't think they can coexist. Like when you look at, you can't have two guys, man. You have to invest in the new generation. I think Salah's been amazing, but for me, it's time up. I'd say.
I do get that. I think a big part of it is at the moment we've now kind of got a player on either wing in Gakpo and Salah, where these days they really don't offer much if they're not scoring or assisting. I don't think you can have two of them. You need at least one of those players to offer something more.
Yeah, I'd agree. If we put this in the context of Man City, right, I think Semenyo is our seller now. I think we liked that. I don't think he offers that much when he isn't scoring, but he does score quite a lot. I think we have a lot of the types of players you need. I think Liverpool could really benefit from like a Jeremy Doku, from a Ryan Cherky, these wingers, if you like, they're not getting the GA, but their creative numbers are through the roof. Like they're the pass before the pass. They're always a threat when they get on the ball. Like if Mo Salah gets on the ball on the halfway line, like you're not thinking, oh no, this is an awful defensive situation. Like it's kind of okay. It's the same thing with Gakpo. Whereas if you brought in someone like, this is a dream shining, right? Yan Diamonde, a Yildiz, when they get on the ball on the halfway line, you are thinking, oh shit, we're in trouble here.
I guess the wonder is the reason we didn't sign a left winger in the summer was because of Rio and Gamoa. So I guess it's just about how I think it's just more about how he develops. I think that's the next kind of logical step. But that's something that Schlott's been criticised a lot for, but managing the game time of a 17-year-old, I don't see an issue with it.
I think fans are often... Sorry, I think fans often want to see like these young academy players played a lot more than they should be, and I think you can develop these guys if you are a Brighton or like an Aston Villa, then it makes sense, right? But I just think when you're Liverpool, man, just go and buy someone that's better. Like if you can buy the best talent in the world, like the very best, what is the point in investing? Maybe like with Rio and Gamoa, I think he's very good, right? But you could invest like 6 years into this guy when you could have had an elite winger, and he just turns out to be kind of good. And I'm not disputing that he is a good talent, but for me, I'd send him out on loan, let him get an experience elsewhere, and just bring in an elite winger now. And then when he is good enough to play in the team properly, then bring him back. I think it's wasted almost playing him now.
I do see the point. I think a big part of like the fan reaction is essentially the Yamal effect of people just being like, well, he could be our version of him. But it's a weird one as well. You mentioned like being Liverpool. Before this summer, Liverpool would not go and sign the best players. That's partly how I got into watching the Bundesliga and Serie A more, because I wouldn't be looking at like the elite players that Liverpool in theory would have the ability to sign. I'd be looking at these kind of like more unknown players that we would tend to go for.
But even then, though, you go and buy like a Sadio Mane. That's a bad example because he was very well known. But you go and get a Mo Salah, say, from Roma. Like you go and get these lesser guys who are better. I think that's still more valuable now because you have to win now, right? Liverpool can't afford to invest 5 years into a project that doesn't really work out and finish like 6th, 7th. Whatnot. Like you have to win now. You need guys that are going to win you now, and you can still have Rio and Gamoa as that asset, but just let him develop somewhere else. This is what Real Madrid are doing with Endrick, right? They're not playing Endrick over Mbappe because that's ridiculous. They've sent him out on loan. He'll develop there, and when he's good enough, he'll come back into the squad.
I guess it's a question of whether he is good enough to at least be just the backup, because Mbappe and Endrick is the example of that is essentially that Mbappe is their best player. Gakpo, a lot of the time, is a hindrance on the team, and he is who's ahead of N'Gamoa.
The thing with N'Gamoa, though, you mentioned him being the backup. Do you want a player that young as your backup? For me, I'd rather have him maybe elsewhere playing minutes. And I think you could bring in someone that's like 26, 27, right? That's going to be a better backup now than Rio N'Gamoa is. And by the time N'Gamoa is ready to play for you, to start for you, that guy's finished, you bring N'Gamoa back. I think that is the better way to do it for me.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. I wonder who we'd look at in that winger market, in that bracket, who would be, I guess, all right with being a backup, but who could also come and be effective.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting one. You want your Leandro Trossard, right? I was looking at this for the video, and it's like I'd normally just go on FB Ref and go, oh, this guy looks pretty good, and then go and watch him a bit. But I can't do that anymore, so I didn't find anyone in the end. But I think, yeah, you just want that. I think Trossard is the great example for Arsenal, right? He's always there. He's always contributing. He's not fantastic by any means, but he's a very, very good squad player. That's exactly what Liverpool need for me in that position. I think with Rio and Gamo, though, don't get me wrong, it sounds like this is what I like. I don't like it. It's not romantic, but I think it is very efficient. It's the Man City way, if you like. We'll almost never bring through a youngster from very, very young. They always go out on loan until they're like 21-ish.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, I guess the big thing is now, supposedly Bayern are looking at buying Gakpo in the summer, which is something I think we should 100% consider. And I guess it wouldn't be the case of who can we get as a backup to Gakpo. We could actually just go and get a first choice left winger. Someone like Diamande, like you mentioned, would be unreal. I think Yildiz is going to sign. Yildiz, it sounds like, he's going to sign a new deal at Juventus. So I think he'll be off the market. But Diamande as well, supposedly, is a Liverpool fan. I don't know if that adds to it, but
this is something I hate. So this stupid PR marketing. Whenever a player wants to move, like you'll see him in every Premier League's kit from when he was like a kid, and then he's supposedly like a fan of this club. It's a professional businessman. It doesn't. I don't think it impacts anything. Like we know Semenyo is a legendary Arsenal fan. So that's what I mean. Everyone's a fucking Man United fan. It's like Semenyo is supposedly a Liverpool fan, a Chelsea fan, an Arsenal fan, and a Man United fan, and he's come to Man City because he likes money. Like that's the reality of it. It is a job. Like if you're an accountant, you're not a HMRC fan. You'll still probably go private sector because there's more money there. Do you know what I mean? Like I hate it.
Yeah. I guess I'm more romantic than I thought, but clearly that doesn't amount to much. I wonder if in like 20, 25 years we'll see we'll see little kids in like Al Hilal or Al Nassr shirts saying it was always my dream to be in the AFC Champions League.
Oh, 100%. It's kind of like when you get these academy players going on loan. I love watching the interviews of it. Like we sent Divine Mikasa to Leicester, and you can tell there's no place he wants to be less than Leicester City. And he's stood there going, yeah, it's always been my dream to leave Man City and play for Leicester. I'm so happy to be at this club. He's just so obviously fuming with it.
It's like, anyway. Do you remember Robinho's first press conference when he signed for you?
Oh, that's before my time, man. I was like 6 years old.
I think he referred to you guys as Chelsea on 2 occasions.
That's what I mean. Like for players, it doesn't matter. It's the job. Like they go to whoever offers them the most money. If we're realistic, I think Al Nassr is a great point. Like nobody's dream is to play for Al Nassr, but still, so many people will go there because the cash is absolutely massive, and ultimately, it is a profession. But just to go back onto Yan Diamande, I think I haven't watched loads of him. I've seen a lot of people rate him very highly, who opinion I respect. So naturally, I think I rate him quite highly as well. But I've only maybe watched him like 3 times. As someone that watches a bit more of the Bundesliga, where do you kind of sit on him?
I think he's fantastic. He's explosive, direct, and fearless. He's strong as well. I think that's a big thing. He's very powerful. And one thing I did think about was how quickly it's all happened to him. He played, I think, 20 or so games. Yeah, he played I think 20 or so games for Leganés last year in La Liga Dos.
Yeah,
and now he's arguably someone that Leipzig rely on. It's all happened so quickly, and it makes me think that he can switch those levels. He can get himself into those situations very well. I think he can be very adaptable. And he's someone that I think whoever signs him will have, an elite winger for at least a good 7-8 years minimum.
I don't dispute his ability because I've watched him enough to do that. But I think there's always a risk going Bundesliga wingers for me. We saw Jamie Gittins go to Chelsea and he's been absolutely terrible because there is such a difference between playing in the Bundesliga as an attacker and playing in the Premier League. In the Bundesliga, like the spaces are massive. Like every team plays a ridiculous high line. Like you're going to be able to run in behind, be direct. Whereas if he came in at Liverpool and he's coming up against this low block, is he going to do that and be as effective? I think that's a difficult question that no one knows the answer to until he comes in, right? But it is a risk. And when they ask him for £90 million, for me, I'd go French league if, like I say, if there's a good option.
That's fair. He's someone that I've known. He's someone as well that I think always looks towards the riskier option. He'll always kind of go more direct. And I think that's something that that's a good trait to have, especially for someone who's young, because I think it's something that they can work. I think it's a lot better for someone to like be constantly looking for risks all the time and then maybe tone that down a bit rather than the other way around. But well, you mentioned Gittins, right? The weird concept is that he actually wasn't that great for Dortmund. Like he was pretty good for the first 3-4 months of last season, and after that he got like I think 2 assists from January onwards, and that was it.
Right.
I think it's just a matter of Chelsea's system, seeing a young English winger and thinking, you know, either he'll turn out good or he'll make us a profit.
Yeah, that is a good point, actually. I don't watch enough Bundesliga, like I say, to have a great opinion on these players before they move. But is Yan Diamonde someone who you would absolutely go and get like 100%? Or if it was a choice between, say, him or Bradley Barcola, would you go Yan Diamonde every time?
Oh, I like them both for different reasons. I think if it was for Liverpool, I would probably go Diamande because, like you mentioned earlier, I think he's a bit more like Cherki or Doku than Barcola is. I think Barcola is more of a... He definitely offers things outside of scoring and assisting, but I feel like Diamande does that a little bit more.
I think if you were to graph it, say, with like the potential and the variance of that potential, I think Barcola's your safe option, right? He'd look something like that.
Yeah.
And then Diamande's like that, where he could be a lot better, but equally, I think he could be a lot worse. I think it comes down to whether you think Liverpool are in a position to be able to take that risk, right? If you think they are, and how big the risk is, you might think it's more like that versus that. In which case you'd probably go for it. But for me, I don't think Liverpool are in a position where they can afford to take that risk, it not work out, and then you're in the mud. Like for me, I think the safer option right now is maybe the better option. But this is coming from someone who's watched 3 games of Yan Diamande, so I'd take it with a pinch of salt.
I should be watching more Liga, to be fair, because from what I've seen of Barcola is primarily Champions League, and I saw a bit of him at Lyon in the Europa League, I think, before that. And from what I can gather, he's come on leaps and bounds in recent years. So I think that's another variable, like the rate at which he's constantly increasing. How far can we get that?
I think for like just with someone like Jeremy Doku, like when he moved, I couldn't believe no one else was in for him. Because you've got a player here who's playing in Ligue 1, which is a league that translates nicely to the Prem, and he's the best dribbler in the world statistically. Like to get him statistically, he's like the most efficient dribbler. Even at that point, like he's completing the most dribbles per 90. I think now 1v1, he's still like 1 or 2. I think it's him and Mbappe, basically. Him, Mbappe, and Vinicius Jr. are kind of the 3 names that are always there. But Doc is ridiculous. When you've got a player that's so young and so unbelievable in that one attribute, even if his output isn't great, which it wasn't, I find it ridiculous that everyone wasn't like queuing up for him like 100 million type.
I didn't get that, actually. I guess it's because, like you said, statistically he's never been brilliant, but he's someone who I thought back then he was the complete wrong fit for City, because I bought into the whole Guardiola will turn him into a system player that just isn't actually the case in reality. But I think just allowing him to be free, it makes such a massive difference on the rest of your team.
Yeah, I think with young players as well, I'll always look for buying the physical qualities rather than the technical qualities, which maybe is a bit backwards. It's not very footballing, but it comes
It's
from
not at all,
the
actually.
concept that you can mold the technical qualities over time. Like, you can't like coach someone to be, well, you can actually, you definitely can, but you can't like, do you get what I mean? You can't make someone like go from being Per Mertesacker to like an elite athlete. Like, that doesn't happen. Whereas you can coach players massively in possession on the ball, technically, which is why I think Kushnov as well is such a good pickup for us, because he's a centre back that is ridiculous physically. Is he the best on the ball? Is he the best technically? Decision making? Absolutely not. But it just gives him the potential to be fantastic, which is why if I'm Liverpool looking for a winger or a midfielder or a defender, I'd always go physicality first with young players for the modern Premier League, especially.
Yeah. I was reading an article about Frankfurt CEO. His name's like Marcus Krush or something like that, I think, where he said that before picking up Omar Marmoush, he was statistically the worst finisher in the Bundesliga. But they saw that he was quick, that he was strong, and that he could, that he was relatively good in the air for his size, and that was all they went off of. And within like, what was it, a season and a half, they made 75 million euros profit on him. Similar kind of thing with Ekitike.
I think finishing's quite an interesting statistic, if you like, because I don't think you can really be great at it. Like, when you look at the stats, where it's like XG versus goals, the variance on an elite finisher compared to an average finisher is like very, very minimal. The only like great finishes you get are Harry Kane, and then Messi and Heung-min Son were up there as well. But even then, like, if they had 100 XG, their elite finishing might be they score 106 goals, whereas an average player would score 100. I don't think that variance is big enough to justify finishing as an attribute almost. For me, when I'm looking at a striker, I think this happened with Hugo Ekitike, I'm looking at how many chances can they accumulate. Ekitike accumulated like 22 XG in the Bundesliga last season. I think he only scored like 14 goals or something like that. But I backed Ekitike from the start, because it's like, if you're accumulating that much, I think you're an amazing striker, because you'd assume that you then score your XG next season, which he is doing now, and then you'll output rockets.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. The more as you mentioned it, because it's, I guess a lot of it is partly being scarred by Darwin Núñez, in that I was seeing the XG constantly be up there. I was like, it's gonna happen, and then it didn't.
This is my like hot football take. Like, I think Darwin Núñez could be like a world-class striker in somewhere like the Bundesliga, or literally just any league apart from the Prem, right? I think in the Prem is like, his stock's so low now, I don't think you come back from that. He is a meme. Whereas if he went to like somewhere like a Dortmund kind of, I think he'd be amazing, because he's not a bad finisher. Like, when you look at Benfica and Al Hilal, I don't actually know if he's doing all right. Let's just assume he is, finishing wise. I don't think
he's not doing great for this rate.
And all right, maybe not then. But let's just say he's not a bad finisher. I don't think you can be a bad finisher. Well, you can, but most players aren't. I think he'd do well. I'd like to see him try, because athletically, again, Darwin Núñez is fantastic. He's really good at getting in the positions to get chances, which I think just makes you a good striker.
I still think that, and I would love to see him at somewhere like, do you know what, somewhere like Stuttgart, actually, on Sebastian Hoeneß would be immense. But
man, I'm just looking at Darwin Núñez's stats for the season quickly. Look. Darwin Núñez foot mud. Yeah, he fucking stinks, man. Maybe not. Yeah. Jesus Christ, that is bad. He's at 11.5 XG and he's scored 6 goals against like.
Yeah, they were trying to flog him to. They were trying to flog him to one of the Turkish teams that wasn't like any of the big four, and that was all I needed to hear. I really hoped it would work, but
Yeah, but this is the weird thing, right? If we go back to the season that made you sign him, that great one he had in the Portuguese league,
Oh my god!
he overperformed XG there
I
massively.
know.
He had 26 goals from 19 XG. The season before that, it was season before that he did underperform again. So maybe he is just bad. I think he's just bad, but yeah, maybe not.
I held
I
out
quite
hope for
like
so
Darwin
long.
Núñez though.
I love him. I adore him, but I held faith in him for too long, I think.
Yeah. Hello and welcome back to the Tactics Board podcast. Now we're going to go into the segment of the show where we preview the game we're talking about, which today is Man City Liverpool. So, Ryan, you made an interesting point there that you think Curtis Jones will start this game over McAllister. Why is that?
I think I prefer him to. I'm not sure if he will or not, but I just think Jones offers us, at the moment, more solidity. I think he does the things that McAllister did really well previously better now, alongside just being a little bit more, I guess, composed and sure of himself. And I think he'll.
Sorry, carry on.
I think Jones will be a lot better at, like, I guess, killing your momentum if we have an opportunity to do so.
I think just off the ball as well, we were talking about in the first half of the show how McAllister has just dropped off a cliff physically. I think Curtis Jones is quite a physical player. Like, he did an interview after a Champions League game, I can't remember which one it was, talking about how he kind of does all the dirty work for the team.
Yeah, I think that might have been after PSV. Oh, that was not a fun day.
Yeah. But in a game which I think this game is going to be all about who can be more physical in the midfield, basically. That is what so many Premier League games are about now, who can win the duels, which is why I've gone for Rodri and Nico Gonzalez together for us. Because I just think having that physical presence in there, especially when we're playing with two strikers, when we've got Cherki who's really poor out of possession, will help us massively. Same with Semenyo in this position, right? I don't think he is the best pocket player. Someone like Foden or Johnny Reinders is better in this role, but Semenyo just gives you that out of possession presence that I think we could need in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Last time around, Doku absolutely ripped us to shreds. O'Reilly handled Salah really well. I think a big part of it was Doku's pretty strong in himself. To be fair, as well, Doku's rapid, but he's also a lot like firmer than I gave him credit for.
I mean, lucky for you, Doku is injured for this game, I believe. So
Semenyo, yeah, I don't know why I'm happy about that. Semenyo has already tormented us enough, and he's also someone known for his physicality.
Yeah, I don't see Semenyo as the same profile as Doku, though. I don't think he's gonna get up against Kanate and just be that transition threat that Doku is. For me, Semenyo is much more of this kind of this second striker, right? We've seen this a lot for us so far this season. Well, not a lot. We've seen it twice, but Semenyo and Mamouche starting up front together since Semenyo come in, should I say. We've seen it a lot. And it works quite nicely because they kind of bounce off of each other. Semenyo is great in this role. But obviously, Erling Haaland is going to start this game. And with the form Mamouche is in, I'd be surprised if he was dropped, especially when what do you think's changed about
Mamouche in recent weeks? Because I saw a lot of stick for him earlier in the season, but now he seems to be flourishing a bit more. Why do you think that is?
Because he's on the pitch, I think it's a big factor.
That is probably a key variable.
When you're on the bench, you can't influence the game as much as when you're on the pitch. I think a lot of the stuff he got the first half of the season was just really silly. I think it's Man City Twitter. It's ridiculous because like I think he played like 2 games. I'll fact check that, but he didn't play a lot. He played 1 or 2 games, which weren't fantastic. Then he got injured, and then he went to AFCON, and now he's back in the team. So we haven't seen him feature a lot, and I think a lot of people that didn't really realize why he was out just thought Pep Guardiola wasn't going with him. But as well, if we want to look at it from a different point of view, he was playing up front as a one striker by himself, which I don't think is his game. For me, it's much more of he is great in that second striker role, and if we not play him there, I play him out wide here, which again isn't really his game. But recently we've seen Guardiola shift to playing this double striker role, almost this 4-2-2, and I think that suits Mamouche's game really well because he can drop in, he can run in behind and be a threat, but also in the box, like say that you have a situation like this, what we see so often is kind of Konate and Van Dijk will both like gravitate towards Erling Haaland. And I think what Marmoush is great at doing is just finding the space where Haaland isn't consistently. Like in transition as well, the runs he makes, the positions he takes up. So often he won't actually touch the ball, but he'll still create the goal, if that makes sense, through his positioning.
Exactly. This is what he was excellent at last year, alongside Ekitike for Frankfurt.
Yeah. This is why I love Marmoush. Like we scored a goal in the Champions League. You probably haven't seen it because it was only against Galatasaray. But basically, Doku got the ball in the midfield, kind of in this position. It's a counter-attack, something like this, right? Doku's got the ball here. And normally, just say Doku's you. And then he's just played a ball through to Haaland, and Haaland scored 1v1. And that it looks like such a, that's just a Haaland goal. Marmoush hasn't touched the ball here. But because we had Marmoush up front as well, and he was in this wide position, he's dragged Konate and, well, it wasn't Konate, but he's dragged the centre-back and the full-back way further to the right. And he's just created this kind of partition to be able to play the ball. Whereas if we aren't playing with Marmoush, then you see this just shifts across, right? And that space isn't there. So I think we've seen this. We scored a goal. Semenyo scored a goal against Wolves for the exact same reason. Like we see it a lot. I think Marmoush has a lot of influence without maybe you seeing there's influence there.
Yeah, that he essentially he was sort of a decoy a bit last year for Frankfurt.
I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, he is like a decoy, if you like. I like that. But as well in this game, I don't know if we will go with Marmoush because the problem with this system is it doesn't really work for Haaland. Because what you have is you have these four up front, right? And it's all very fluid. Like you'll see a bit of that, maybe a bit of that. But obviously, you don't want Erling Haaland here. Like that's not good.
Like, so the area in which he's at his best is where you're congested.
Yeah. And then you want him to go bang in behind like fast. But the problem with that then is because this whole attacking system is so built around these rotations is when Haaland isn't rotating, then you kind of get the right winger, in this case, Cherki, stuck out here as well. So the rotations just become these two swapping about, which then isn't really that effective. So it's an interesting one. I could see us going just Haaland if Doku was here, but because we don't have Doku, I think we're kind of forced to go with the two up front.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think a big part of the way we're going to play is how are we going to handle the right back situation? Because Szoboszlai obviously isn't as positionally attuned as say Conor Bradley or Frimpong is because he doesn't play there. I think it's something that I hope Kirkes will be the more defensive one of the two, just because I think he's got a better understanding of the areas that he should be in.
I think Szoboszlai, obviously you watch more Liverpool than me, so you're probably right. But for me, I think Szoboszlai's a better defender than Kirkes. I don't look at Kirkes in defensive positions ever and think, oh, you're quite secure. I think he's quite weak. Like a bit, maybe too aggressive, a bit rash. He's kind of a bit like Kushnov in that sense. But like with Cherki up against him, I could just see him diving in a lot, Cherki kind of skipping past him. And it's nice that he's got Van Dijk next to him, right? So he's kind of okay. But I think this is a battle that I expect Cherki to dominate really for me. And with Szoboszlai, sorry, go on.
I wouldn't 100% agree with you earlier in the season, but last 10 games or so, Kirkes has sort of reined in that pitbull approach a little bit. I think he's a bit more conserved, and he is fairly strong. I think he's able to use his physicality a little bit better. But I'm not saying that I expect him to win, but I don't think it will be as clear cut as it maybe would have been earlier in the season.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about Szoboszlai at right back and why I'd probably go with him for you over someone like Conor Bradley is because of in possession, right? He's going to come into midfield like this. Or maybe not like that, but you get Summit like this. Or maybe Szoboszlai goes like that. You get that, right? And then you have what are Jones, Gravenberch, and Szoboszlai are three players who have pretty good physically. And when I look at our midfield, I don't think this is what he'll do. Realistically, it will be Bernardo Silva. If I find him, there he is. Realistically, it will be Rodri and Bernardo Silva. And this is something that just, I think you just overrun us, man. Like, this is what Spurs did in the second half to come back. They put Pape Sarr on in there, and then Conor Gallagher and him just absolutely dominated our midfield because they just outran us. And that is what the Premier League's about now. It's about duels and it's about running. And if you have these four in there, you're going to win more duels than us and you're going to run further, which would suggest you probably win the game.
Yeah, like I think Rodri is still an elite defensive midfielder, but he has lost a bit. He has lost a bit of sharpness.
Yeah,
and I think that is something that ideally, if Szoboszlai was to end up around that position, he could exploit.
I think we could just see two really narrow approaches in this, right? Because we mentioned before, Cucurella, Mo Salah even never tracking Cucurella in that Chelsea game ages ago. Is that something we just do with Nico O'Reilly as well? Just put him in there. Semenyo is really narrow too. Cherki's going to be narrow. We could just see something like this where everything is really congested. So remember, what you did at Anfield was the complete other approach. You tried to go everything wide, to Gakpo and Salah. And if Mo Salah has a good game, you win that game. But you're so reliant on that, which I think is why we could maybe see Slot just go, this time, let's just battle for the midfield. And I think we can win that.
Because last year, when we played you at the Etihad, I think was the game we played that 4-2-4 with Jonathan Szoboszlai up top.
I was there, man. It was terrible. We were absolutely battered. Yeah.
But I guess the big thing is, I don't see who is that decisive in the same kind of positions.
Yeah. I'd say Florian Wirtz is pretty. Like, if you can get, I think this is going to be quite a chaotic transitional game, right? Because I don't see you coming and sitting back like a lot of teams do against us. I don't see us sitting back. I think it will be very end-to-end, which suits both teams almost, which means you will get big spaces in the midfield, which is where Florian Wirtz thrives, right? You want to get him on the ball in those large spaces and let him create there. He's not someone who's super technical in the tight spaces for me. I think he's better in transition.
He's better in open space,
yeah, which is suit him in this game, which is why I'm very, very scared of him. But I mean, even when we played you at the Etihad last season, remember, in the second half, it did open up a little bit more. Slot made a few changes, and you did, at that point, the game was kind of done, right? So it didn't matter, but you did create a lot of good chances that on another day, if you take those chances, like it's a 3-2 or 3-3 kind of situation. Like I remember Gakpo missed an open goal at the back post. Mo Salah missed a similar one. Like it could have easily have been quite close. I don't think we battered you like the narrative kind of suggested.
In the game earlier in the season? Yeah. I think you were very effective with what you had.
Yeah.
You were very clinical.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean, though. Like, I feel like the narrative after that game was, oh, Man City were amazing, Liverpool were really poor. It was a domination, but I don't think it was on the scoreline. Yes, it's a domination, but when you look at the performances, I think the quality of chances for both teams were quite similar. Like you say, it was that clinical edge that tipped it in our favour.
Yeah, this is a weird one, right? Because you probably had a similar kind of experience in that I have more faith that we'll be able to create against you than against, say, like Burnley.
I disagree because I agree for a Liverpool perspective, but for Man City, I think we're a team, maybe not so much now, but definitely before, we're like the worst team a bad team can play. If that makes sense. Like when you look at someone like Arsenal, I think they dominate in the larger spaces. They're probably better in the bigger games, whereas we're a team that's going to control the ball, will suffocate you, will keep possession. So against someone like Burnley, I think we will always create and win that game.
I meant that from like a...
Sorry, I think it's a more interesting conversation now with how our team's definitely more tilted towards those transitional moments. So maybe with this City team, I'd kind of agree, but I don't think I've seen enough of this City team to be able to definitively say we're better in the big games than the smaller games because we just lose both of them at the moment. So
I feel
kind of just equally as bad.
I guess it's just there's just so much inconsistency. There's so many variables. It looks like confidence is a massive part, I think, for both of these teams at the moment.
Yeah.
Because obviously at the moment, Haaland isn't looking the same as he was earlier in the season. Whereas it's only now where, Vitz and Ekitike really look like they're getting into their stride.
I think Haaland's an interesting point, right? Because it's getting to the point now where you even I start considering is this just like what it is now? It might not just be a bad bit of form. I think even 8 games, you're kind of like, oh, it'll come good, it'll be fine. He'll score in the next one. He'll score in the next one, and then he doesn't score in the next one. And that now, especially with it's being a new system, kind of coincidentally coinciding with when his form dipped, you kind of start thinking, okay, is this systematical now? Or is it just bad form? Because if it's systematical, this is a massive issue, right? You can't have by far your most important and best player being absolutely shit because of the system. Like that's Man United stuff. In that case, you have to adjust. But then there's also the argument of, is it just a coincidence? Which it probably is. And he'll start banging in like 1 billion goals every game again. Hopefully against you. But I don't think he ever... Sorry, he doesn't really ever score that many, does he, against Liverpool? I think he struggles quite a lot up against Van Dijk, which is understandable.
He has previously. I think Haaland is someone who, at the very least, is always a huge issue because of the amount of attention that he gets from everyone else.
Yeah,
I think him and Salah, I think, are alike in that they're two players that can be having absolute 2 out of 10 games and still score an assist, or still contribute massively because they're just always dangerous.
Yeah,
and I think they can take the focus away of a lot of their defenders.
I think their floor is very low, right? Like a bad Haaland performance is abysmal, but equally their ceiling's high. Again, if we come back to the variance thing we were talking about with Yan Diamande, I think someone like Cherky probably looks like that. Like he's consistent, you know what you're going to get. Whereas Haaland's like that, right? Anywhere in that range. But I think. Sorry, what was your other point? I was going to say something interesting about it. I've forgotten what you said.
What was my point?
My mind's just gone absolutely blank.
If it's important enough, it will come back to me.
I'll clap and I'll cut that bit. What was it? It was. I remember when you were talking, I was like, "Oh, that's interesting," and then I've gone with the other one first. I've just, oh my god,
what was I saying? Haaland always a threat. He's always dangerous, but it's a systematic issue.
Gravity. I think in NBA they have a stat called gravity where it basically quantifies how much attention a player commands. I think that would be really interesting to see in football and how that influences, right? Because it's kind of that Marmouche thing that we were talking about earlier, where his position can be really effective despite him never touching the ball. It's like if you could quantify that and say how much expected threat maybe that player has caused due to his positioning and kind of gravity of opponents coming towards him, I think that would be something really interesting. Because even with on a more basic level, just how much gravity they command in terms of defenders marking them out of games, because Bukayo Saka gets criticized a lot for maybe not having the output, but I think if you look at his gravity, he's always marked by 3 or 4 players, so he can't really do a lot.
I think that's why when it comes to Arsenal, people are pandering a bit more towards Madueke because he looks more effective on the ball purely because there's less people surrounding him.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but for me, Saka's an elite winger. And I think that's why, right, we talked about Arsenal maybe getting that left winger before, and I think that's so important for them. I can't believe they went and got Vic York, who everyone that had a brain knew would be kind of shit, instead of an elite left winger, right? Because if you get that elite left winger, Saka doesn't have that gravity anymore, and I think that frees him up to have the output people want him to.
Yeah, I don't know what they were going for with Gyökeres. I don't know the system they assumed that he'd be playing.
I think I saw a TikTok the other day of someone saying like Victor Gyökeres plays like what I'd play like if you stuck me up front in a Premier League game. I think it's so true. Obviously, I'm shit at football. I wouldn't do it to the level Victor Gyökeres would do. But I think he tries to do a lot of the same things that it's like if I was in that situation, you think, oh, I'll try and do that, which is like, oh, ball's come to me, I've panicked and flicked it on. Oh, it's come to me.
Yeah,
terrible touch, right?
He looks like he's playing hot potato rather than football a lot of the time.
Oh man, I just think he's terrible. It's the same thing. Like the choice was him and Seska, and I think so many people are so hyped. Like, oh, they'd both be sick. They'd both be sick. I kind of just looked at it and thought they'll both be shit. Like, I'd have gone Gyökeres over Seska every time. I think Seska's actually been better than him this season. I think that's fair to say. But again, he's not a needle mover for me.
No, but I guess as well, at least Sesko he's got time on his side. It's not to say Gyökeres doesn't have time on his side, but 27 is essentially his physical peak, and his physicality was supposed to be his main attribute.
Yeah, and it's not. It's kind of what we're talking about, right, with Jeremy Jacquet, where these players, they base their whole game about being super physical in a league that isn't super physical, and then they come to the Premier League, everyone's equally as physical as them, and they're kind of just like knacks.
Yeah, I've seen it. I saw it happen with Adama Traore. That was the only player that I've known to just be able to make his entire game about being physical. But we've seen how quickly that faded.
Yeah, I think with Victor Gyökeres as well, it comes back to this like I have this big belief that like no one should try and follow trends. I don't think it's beneficial at all. And it's like we see it with players more than styles, but it happens with styles as well. But like say like Erling Haaland comes in, he's a big success. Then all of a sudden everyone thinks, oh, to win, we need our Erling Haaland. But the truth is, Haaland isn't successful because his profile's successful for the league. He's successful because he's just so much better than everyone else. Like, so bringing in someone obviously in profile who's not as good isn't ever going to be effective. And I think we'll see it with Declan Rice, I think, over the next 2 seasons of teams will go for like maybe someone like Anton Stach, who I think is very good. But I could see if he stays at Leeds for another season, Declan Rice is another good season, this kind of athletic midfielder profile just becomes so overvalued, and then Anton Stach moves for something ridiculous like 85 million and then is kind of an average squad player.
I can see that happening, you know. I can see someone falling for it.
I mean, I really like Anton Stach. I think Man City, I'd love if we went and got him for 40 million. I think he'd be a good fit in terms of elevating our physical profile of the midfield as a squad player. But it's just like, if we go back as well, Van Dijk, he's the good one. Van Dijk comes in, it's like, oh, this centre-back's really good. And then everyone's like, to win, we need a good centre-back. Let's go and get this guy who looks okay at Leicester for ridiculous price. And you just see these profiles get overinflated massively. Like, I think teams need to do their own thing, right? You can't follow these trends.
Easily. I mean, how many teams have we seen suffer because they've tried to come into the Premier League and play patch football?
Exactly. I think that's why with in regards to like company, I think a lot of people want him at City. I don't want him because I don't think he's a stylistic match to the Premier League. I think he's a good manager, right? But at Burnley, he was very stubborn. He's kind of got like, this is my way of playing. I want to play pretty football. I won't adjust at all. And if you put him at City with the modern Premier League where it is about physicality, we'd just flop. Like, we wouldn't be able to deal with it at all.
Yeah, exactly that. Like, he's more than likely going to break some Bundesliga records this season. I think the big comparison is that at City, at Bayern, as it was at Burnley, he was playing with, essentially, the best team in the league. That was he was expected to dominate the championship with Burnley in the same way he's been expected to dominate the Bundesliga with Bayern. But obviously, at City, it's not that clear cut anymore.
I think that's why I talked about this with Kish a while ago. But that's why I thought company to buy was a good appointment because he could win with the dominant side, and we'd seen that. But like you say, we're not the dominant side anymore. I think Arsenal are better. I think we have a similar level squad to you, a similar level squad to maybe Chelsea. Like, we're not miles better than Man United even at the moment. Like, it's a very close. I don't think Vincent Kompany is the guy that's going to move the needle in your favour. I think you probably, again, maybe a Xabi Alonso. We've seen, I think Leverkusen in the Bundesliga, when he was there, are kind of similar ranked to where we are now, where Liverpool are now, which makes it make sense.
Maybe even less so, because when Alonso came into Leverkusen, they were 16th. They were obviously underperforming, but
yeah,
the supposed limit of that team was supposed to be maybe fighting for top 4.
Yeah.
But the way he kind of revolutionized them, and I think that's the main characteristic. I think that I think the main characteristic for a manager should always be the level of improvement each player has. And the level that he unlocked in various players in that Leverkusen team were incredible.
I think the thing about that Leverkusen one, though, obviously, is that for me, that team was all about Florian Wirtz, right? For the most part. And they were 16th because Florian Wirtz had an ACL and just come back.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't really predict the level he'd go to. And the level was so high. Granted, a bit of that is because of how Xabi Alonso platformed him, etc., etc. But if you knew Florian Wirtz is that good, I think the level of that team would have been, they'll finish 3rd, 2nd. To win the league is fantastic, but
it was a lot about Florian.
People make out.
Oh yeah, no, it was definitely about Wirtz, but what he was able to do was, say, Grimaldo, Robert Andrich, Odion Kosunu.
Where is Robert Andrich now? I think he's old,
still there.
I assume. Is he?
He is.
He's quite. I could see him doing well in the Prem at the moment. He's kind of that type of profile that
that'd be an interesting one. I reckon maybe he could do something sort of similar to what Jacques has been able to do at Sunderland.
I think maybe a bit old now, but if you went back and took the player he was like 2-3 years ago, I think that would be quite interesting.
That would be, actually, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, can we get a score prediction for the game of the weekend?
Oh, yeesh. Okay. 2-1 City. I think you'll go 2 up and we'll pull one back in the 86th.
I was going to go for a classic City pool 2-2. I think we're kind of on the... I think it'll be really close. I think it comes down to what Slot decides to do. If he goes down the middle, then it's about the midfield battle. Then if he goes out wide, it's about the performance of Salah, really.
Yeah, because a big part of it...
hands more than ours.
Completely agree, because a big part of it is, like you said about sort of Haaland's loss of form, we've the way he played against, albeit Karabag and Newcastle, who are awful away from home, we've just looked so much different. And I don't know if that's just a temporary thing, if it's due to the quality of opposition, or if it's more of a permanent change. And I guess obviously the biggest test we can face is you guys, because I guess the history, the similarities in our team.
Yeah, I think we're probably the 2 most un-Premier League teams in the Premier League.
So that's a really good way of putting it.
I look at us and see, for the Premier League now, I think of Arsenal, Spurs, Chelsea, these big physical sides. Whereas for me, I think City and Liverpool right now are still footballing sides. We're more European, right?
Yeah, that's I guess why we've done so much better in Europe than in England.
But I think it's also why there's a struggle maybe in England. But then equally as well, I think physical football is just, at the moment, it is the most advantageous football you can play. Because you look at someone like Spurs, right? They had an easy run in Europe, don't get me wrong, but they've done really well because they can dominate teams physically that they can't do in the Premier League. I think, ultimately, I think this Arsenal team right now is one of the best teams of all time for me, which sounds ridiculous because they're not good to watch at all. It is kind of abysmal. It's really boring. But if you put them up against the great Man City teams of the past, you could argue, City will just play them off the park, but they wouldn't, because we wouldn't get near them physically. They'd win every duel and they'd outrun us and they'd dominate the game that way.
It's kind of, that's kind of it. I guess simplifying that, when City were at their best, Pep Guardiola's style was probably the most advantageous in Europe, and he was the best at that system. Arsenal are playing the most effective style in the world, and they're probably the best at that most effective style.
Like, even if you put, I'd love to see like Arsenal go up against one of the best technical teams of all time, like we say, like a Centurion City team, or even like an 09 Barcelona team, because I think the natural reaction is to go, oh, the Barca team would batter them, the City team would batter them, but I don't think they would, because you've got to like the best team at one style versus the best team at the other. It kind of be like the battle of the styles, right? Is physicality more important, or is this technical ability more important? And for me, I think if the Barcelona team's playing at their best, right, I think they win, because you can just go pop, 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 pop. Elite technicality at its peak will beat elite physicality at its peak. We saw that with Barca versus Madrid. But equally, with the technicality, right, the floor is way, way lower than with the physicality. Again, it's about variance and risk, right? We'll do my little hand diagram again for the fourth time in an hour. But with this Arsenal team, you know the performance you're going to get is like here. Whereas if you're an elite technical team, it's kind of like that, which is why I think this Arsenal team is the best chance we've ever seen at winning a quadruple, because they are consistently great, even if they have a bad performance.
Yeah, and I guess on top of that, they are so set in their identity, regardless of who's on the pitch. They have, whether it's the system or whether they just recruited really well, there isn't much difference when Saliba or Gabriel are injured and they've got to play Mosquera. It's really impressive that they can look virtually unchanged regardless.
I think you do see a bit of a drop when they had a few games where both Gabriel and Saliba are out. And then you saw a noticeable difference. But like you say, when only one of them's out the team, it's pretty seamless. Like Hikape yesterday against Chelsea, not yesterday even, Tuesday against Chelsea, I thought he was fantastic. Like the spaces he dominates is like amazing. Again, like Calafiori, who's been someone that's so important to them, can come out, he can go in, and it's quite seamless.
Yeah. That is what will essentially push them further in competition, just their depth.
Yeah. But even like, I think that Man United loss was their worst performance of the season. And this is what I mean about they have that like kind of low variance in performance, right? That is their worst performance. And I think they were still arguably the better team in that game that deserved to win. Like they created.
They created a similar amount. I guess and they lost essentially to two really good goals.
Yeah, that's precisely what I mean. But those goals could, like, most days, neither of those will go in and Arsenal win the game comfortably. Exactly. And that was still a really poor Arsenal performance. Like, and when you look at the Champions League, which is over 2 legs, say they play a poor game, they might lose by a goal at most. Like, they're still going to be in the game. I can't really see them having 2 bad performances back to back. And even if they do, I think they still have a chance.
Yeah, exactly this. I think even on a bad day, they're still incredibly tight. They're still incredibly secure. And the fact that they're not necessarily reliant on their attackers' form for goals, it just makes them more of a threat.
I'm just going to whip out the variance diagram again, because like we say, like Arsenal are here, maybe the more technical teams are here. It's why the Champions League rewards those more riskier kind of styles, whereas the Premier League, in a league format, when you're playing those games, I think the control is better, right? We've seen that in the City Pool era, we were the best team in the Premier League because we had more control. You were better in the Champions League because you were more chaotic in a way, because your peak was probably higher than our peak. And this is how this Arsenal team, I think, could lose. I think over 2 legs, they're a gimme every single time. But in that final, right, say they just play Barcelona, even say they play Man City, I think any team, those 2 teams, because they are so good technically, their peak is higher than Arsenal's peak, which gives them a chance.
Agreed, yeah.
Right. Anyway, that's gone on an hour and 40 minutes. We've kind of just chat away. Very long app. If you've made it this far, I'll be very surprised, because you've watched me do my hand diagram 5 times and haven't clicked off yet, which is amazing. But thanks for coming on.
You've had me say ingenuity about 40 times, so thank you.